Live your life, boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
Yeah, rear naked choke a Cocker Spaniel, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Bro.
Change the neighborhood up.
Conspiracy Farm. Go. Check it out.
All right, man. All right. What is cracking? Faithful farmers, thank you for joining us today. It's been a minute. It's been a hot minute. But as always, I am joined with my partner in crime, UFC Hall of Famer, trainer of champions, eater of worlds, Patrick. What's up, man?
Oh, all kinds of beautiful things. The world is changing ever so fast, right?
Always. We've missed a lot. I mean, we haven't missed it, but as far as reporting it on the show, people have hit us up like, where the fuck are you guys? Like, the world's on fire. They're fucking trying to kill Trump, and, you know, where the hell are you guys? So there's a lot, man. There's a lot to cover, and, I mean, we're going to be, I don't know, probably a little bit of everywhere because, like, so much shit has happened. But, you know, let's catch up, man. What you been up to?
You know, right now I am, of course, in North Dakota, and my better half is promoting a show here, Define the Fight MMA, at a casino near the Canadian border.
Nice.
I am in South Canada, as they say. And so, but a lot of other things going on with soil to human health projects and things over in Western North Carolina. We'll be doing some work. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the Midwest with soil reclamation and, you know, just teaching people where their health actually is supposed to come from, which is the soil, and just doing our best to speed up that timeline so that folks can catch on a little bit. That's all.
Well, and you've obviously been doing this serious work, man, serious homework, deep diving on this. And, you know, we've talked about it here on the show before we kind of took our absence. You know, it was something we've always kind of known that we've all been victims of chemical and biological warfare from our own government. But, I mean, as you broke it down, it was like, I mean, if you get your steps in, if you get all your water in, all that good shit, you know, you're eating organic. But when it comes down to the basics of the soil, and you've gone deep into that, which is crazy because, you know, when we would talk about it, and we're going to get into this here in a little bit, when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that Nicole Shanahan, some of the first words out of her mouth was all about soil reclamation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you know, I've kind of got my issues with her because kind of she did the bait and switch, and her solution was more kind of leaning into that Agenda 21 type stuff. But this is a very, very relevant story, and, you know, I guess we could touch on it. You don't mind talking about a couple. You're working with this council, I think 12, you said, with, you know, some very prominent people. Jim Gale, shout out to Jim. But you got a couple of those guys on your council who are now signed up to work with RFK Jr., the Trump administration, on soil reclamation. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Joel Salatin, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe he'll probably accept a role as minimum, an advisory role with the USDA. And, of course, he's, you know, one of the biggest names in regenerative agriculture. Joel, yeah, great guy, very as knowledgeable as they come on keeping, you know, basically an operation self-sustaining so that you don't need to go elsewhere to get any inputs, things like that. I mean, he's a very, very bright guy, been teaching people for decades how to do that. And then Kevin Fretz, who has been dealing with compost facilities and waste management and a lot of those other issues. You know, what do you do with waste? You know, in 2007, I was working on programs mainly in Europe where we were going to use facilities to incinerate at low oxygen levels, so there's very little emissions, everything that you can imagine in a landfill. And those would convert, you know, into electricity. You could power literally cities with these units, what we were doing. And then the 2008 collapse happened, the housing collapse, and that all went away. So, I mean, had all that stuff actually taken place, I'd probably be retired by now. But either way, you know, I'd spent a lot of time in that world learning about it. And Kevin's certainly one of the world's foremost experts in that area. And so we're, you know, he's going to be on the EPA side of things. And then, you know, I'm more than happy sitting on the private side, being able to implement a lot of the things that we're doing, whether it's soil, whether it's, you know, educating farmers on how to grow without chemicals, to livestock to, human beings. I mean, we're all just literally gnats crawling around on the earth. We are all one big organism, if you think about it, and that we all need the 90 essential nutrients in carbon-bonded form to create vitality here on life and the proper biology. That means, yes, the bugs that we're all made of, and we want those bugs. We want those bugs to be in the proper populations in our body, so that we reach that word called homeostasis.
There you go.
Right? So
that balance.
That's really what it's about. Yeah, and so Americans have been educated out of that, and so when people wonder how things got this bad, well, you have to understand, historically speaking, in the 60s and 70s, the agriculture, for instance, agriculture schools at big universities were taken over by chemical company money, and so the genius biological professors were moved out of their positions, and the chemists were moved in a lot of ways, right? So that's how we've ended up here over the past 50 plus years. And well, we have the solutions. We know what the solutions are, and so we're putting those to work.
Well, and we're going to be talking, more about it as we revisit you guys. And again, I hollered at Pat, kind of I don't know. If you want to hear more on the network, we have one of Pat's partners, Jim Gale and Matthew Britt, have a great show called Seeds of Abundance. Check it out. That's here on the network. They talk all about this stuff, about, just healing through the food. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. But yeah, man, we're going to try to bring as much content to you guys. Again, both Pat and myself schedule's a little crazy, and I know most people are used to very regularly, very consistent. We're going to try to stay consistent as possible. I told Pat, man, if our schedules coincide, let's start, let's slide in and drop some shit. The world's on fire.
Yeah.
And, if we can, just come in and talk a little bit of shit, man, because we always love doing that.
Yeah, big announcement that's coming, and I'll break it here. The Council of 12, all of us are working together. We are 100% laser focused on, environment and children, right? I mean, that's really what this is about. And I want to create a world, for our children that they can enjoy, not worry about the environment toxifying them and making them sick with the myriad of all these different illnesses that Americans are plagued with. I mean, we know that comes from the environment. It always has. Environment always dictates genetic expression, as Steve Moore says, and that results in immune functions. But we are 100% focused on, we are now gathering a lot of investment dollars that are coming in because Rowdy Myers is on our team. His nickname is Tag, one of the most, if not the most successful developers in American history. We are going to build entire development communities. When you see a development go up of 100 houses, and everybody's putting chemicals on their lawns and trying to create that leave it to beaver front yard bullshit that's gone on forever. That's not going to be the case in these communities. We are going to be chemical free communities. We are going to teach people how to when you go over to the neighbor's house, if my kid's going over to the neighbor's house to play, I want it to be a yard full of, apple trees, pear trees, real food, that my kid could have, pull an apple off a tree in the neighbor's yard and eat it. And that's what these entire developments are going to become, of sustainable housing. We're talking completely off grid if people so choose, where they can have solar, wind, and of course we've got experts working on, because we know we can pull power out of the ether. I mean, there's guys that'll take a drone and attach a copper wire to it, and fly it up into the sky and power a transistor radio with just that. So the ether does contain all the power we need. We technically don't need windmills. We don't need solar panels. We don't need any of that.
Tesla knew what he was doing, bro. Tesla was hip to it.
Yes, that's what Tesla was doing. And so all of these things are coming about, and we're going to build entire communities with investment dollars, sustainable housing, recycled steel frames, all these things, fire retardant, so they're basically can withstand hurricanes, fires, you name it. That's the type of housing that's going to exist in these communities, and people are going to have no chemicals in their lawns. They're going to have absolute health all around them in the environment. That's where people want to raise their kids. That's what this is about, right?
Well, you are being the change that we want to see in the world. We always advocate for that. And, think globally, act locally. It's cool to see. You've been busy, obviously, man. And obviously we're going to stay on top of it as we continue to keep pumping out more episodes for the farm. But, thanks for that update. And let's jump into what the fuck's been going on since we last chatted with everybody 5 months ago. Where do we start, champ? Where do we start?
I think here's where we need to start. I really want this. I hate doing this, but I don't hate doing it at the same time. 3 years ago, and I spoke to a guy who's a very well-decorated military guy. He goes, dude, 3 years ago you were saying Trump was going to be elected, and you knew he was going to be put in all along. He goes, you're the only guy that said that for 3 straight years. You're the only guy I know that said it. And we know a common friend of ours, Jason Burmas, who's, I respect a great deal. He's put out some incredible documentaries and has a great show. But he was convinced that, no, Militich, Trump's going to get thrown in jail. They're not, no, you're insane, Militich. You don't know what you're talking about. And so I have to gloat a little bit. on this.
Well, I mean, it was a 50-50 shot. But, I mean, I always talk about, it's the social engineers, they chew up this thing in generations, 10-year increments and shit. So when it swings, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we hated Bush so much, we had to swing to the left and get Obama. We did 8 years of Obama, then we had to swing back to the right. And so they really went super fucking ape shit, big capital R retard over the last 3.5, 4 years. So, of course, it had to swing back to the right. And whoever that was going to be was going to be. But obviously, Trump, he's a master of branding and marketing. I mean, come on. He taught, like I said before, he taught Vince McMahon how to do Vince McMahon shit, dude. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame. So now here he is, back in the mix. Well, actually, before that, shit, man. There was a couple assassination attempts, and if you ask other people, there were 3 of them. What are your thoughts, particularly the first one? The first one in Butler, Pennsylvania. The kid milling around for fucking hours, got a drone, gets on this roof. What are your thoughts on that first one in Butler, brother?
Well, the way it was sold is, that
who was in a BlackRock commercial, by the way? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the kid who was in the BlackRock commercial.
Well, they marketed this situation and this event almost like the powers that be were trying to get Trump taken out, right?
Right.
Is that the way it was painted? Am I correct in saying that?
Well, so, yeah. These huge lapses, oops, I'm sorry, the most sophisticated protective agency in the world just happened to let this dipshit get on. I mean, it's just what? Enter Keystone Cop Benny Hill music. Come on, man. It's 2024, bro.
Yeah, so if we were to look back at his medical records, I'm sure he was raised on, a cocktail of SSRI drugs. The poor kid, somehow, I don't know who talked to him or who put him up to it and put him up on that, told him to get up on that roof. And
some MK Ultra shit, dude. Come on, MK Ultra.
A $15,000 rifle, or I'm not even sure. I know it was a very expensive piece of equipment, and stuck him up there and let him fire off a couple shots. Whatever transpired. I wasn't there. And then the poor kid gets his head blown off. There's some manipulation there.
After getting off 8 shots, which is just, I mean, how he got there is fucking mind-numbing. Getting off 8 shots, equally mind-numbing. I'm just saying, dude, okay, so when I heard about it, my boy's son sent it to me. I watched the Twitter video. I saw he got hit and he went down. I was like, oh, God, they just back into the left him 2024 style live on TV, and then I saw he got up or whatever. And again, my default mode is cynicism. My default mode is cynicism, ladies and gentlemen. So when he gets up and does the fucking blood on his face, he's risen his fist, and the Secret Service let him open up to get this fist thing. I'm like, that's a fucking T-shirt right there. And of course, within hours, it was a T-shirt. So I just saw. I'm serious. That's what it was. It was a meme within seconds. The whole fight thing, and I was just like, man, this seemed to be part of a marketing strategy. And it was just so many red flags. Even the normies I work with who were just normies, the day is fucking long. This looks fake or staged to me. And I again, like you just said, I wasn't there. But it smells bad. And then people are like, well, if somebody died, and I'm not making light of that this gentleman died or people were actually shot. And I had to remind folks, dude, these are fucking psychopaths who run this shit. In the Iraq war, they said Iraq had something to do with 9/11. They wound up killing 4 million civilians. The Vietnam War, based off the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which created the Vietnam War, which was a lie, and both sides, the North, the South, plus American soldiers, you're pushing 5 million fucking people died over a lie. Then we can get into 9/11, etc. They have no problem bodying people, let alone millions, whether or one, to push their further agenda. And that's some dark shit. And I know that sounds super freaking cynical, and I know, but it just, for me, it just, something was wrong there. Something was just way, way off. And then when you hear the Secret Service hearings, like, again, this is the most elite protective service in the world. And when you hear this, like, honk and bonk explanation for shit, something like that couldn't have happened unless it was allowed to. Now, whether it was like all staged to just make it look whatever, or whether the deep state actors trying to get rid of Trump, I don't know. But it just seemed off to me. And that's just my humble opinion on it.
Well, my pointing out years ago that you don't torture someone that the people connect to, and the people are also suffering from. I think they've been through the COVID thing. They've been locked down. Many, many, many thousands, well over 100,000, if not 200, 300,000 private businesses went under during COVID, the lockdowns, the destruction of the economy. It gave bankers plausible deniability to print trillions upon trillions of dollars.
The largest transfer of wealth in human history.
And a psychological operation of fear that convinced normal thinking human beings to load the kids up into the family Vista Cruiser and drive them over to the drive-through clinic and get the kids and themselves injected with completely, experimental drugs by total strangers who just know how to run a syringe. There's some shit been going on. I mean, we have to be honest here. But the path that Trump has taken through the manipulation of the people and the, beating him up and dragging him into court and mug shots,
right.
And, all the other stuff. I mean, if we're honest, I mean, I don't know how many people can be honest these days, but if we're honest and we look back through history of the martyr to king or dictator type situations, it follows that path, right? And that was what I was picking up on 3 years ago was everything seems off to me. As the people suffer, they're going to identify with someone else who is deemed the leader who is being crucified, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But that's all I'm saying. If that's a total coincidence, and I'm wrong, hey, great. But I just know I recognize signs, very obvious signs that stick out like a sore thumb to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I was picking up on years ago. That's all I can say.
Well, and again, my default mode is fucking cynicism, and I honestly believe all of this shit, the lawfare, the impeachments, it was all part of the work as the psyop to, like you said, to martyrize this guy, to victimize him. So when he comes back, the triumphant, the parade is that much more triumphant. And honestly, man, and again, it's very cynical, and I hate to keep saying this, but we know with the modernization of the Smith Modernization Act, they can now legally lie to us. Now, does this mean, hey, come get this vaccine, it's great for you, or just this lies that they put in the newspaper? How deep can these lies go? And as someone who's watched professional wrestling, not anymore, but when I was a kid, I could always sniff out a fucking good professional wrestling angle. And in wrestling, every year they have the big blow-off, which is WrestleMania, where they conclude all the feuds, all the fucking whatever. And that's what our elections are every 4 years. They hype us up for 4 years leading up to the election, and then we have the big blow-off in the election, which, we can discuss the veracity of those things. Is that all part of the show? But I honestly, man, all of this, like you said, I sniffed it like a fucking fart in a car ages ago. And it was like, oh, man, they're really going to throw him in. I mean, just everything seems so, no pun intended, trumped up and a part of this angle to victimize him. It's like I said, to make the victory that much sweeter.
I just keep hearing Jason Burmis go, no, Militich, you're crazy.
Well, and I like it. And I would say, I said the joke before, with this, the left is right to some degree. Trump, the epic clapback that he is about to engage in with his political enemies, we'll see, because it all could be part of the work. When he won, I said simply, a Godfather reference, the Corleones just beat the Tatalias today. That's all it was. They're all gangsters. It's all organized crime to some degree. But again, part of this, the swinging from right to left, it's going to swing super hardcore right because it went so far left. I said he's going to make Augusto Pinochet's fucking helicopter rides look like a merry-go-round. because that's pretty much what he did when, Allende got kicked out in Chile back in, I think it was September 11th back in the day. And then they brought in Pinochet to basically right all of the wrongs of the radical left. So we got to be careful, man. Like, as I told my boy Rob, shout out to Rob Carter. We're going to get him on the show pretty soon. We got to be careful with the precedents we're allowed to take place, because when we allow them to take place with people we don't like, the clock is fucking ticking when it starts happening to people we do like. So we got to be careful. But again, I think this is all a part of kind of the operation, as we see these roundups here about to happen. Well, maybe a Pat Miletich or a Jeff Wilson or an alternative thinker might get swept into one of these fucking detention centers. You just never know. So we got to be careful of the precedents we allow to happen. So
all I know is that, ultimately, all I'm here to do is educate people on the environment, fixing the environment, which we're doing. We can do it at a very fast rate. Takes a couple months to remediate and transmute all toxins. Doesn't matter what they are. Even forever chemicals are converted down to zero, and I mean zero. We've got the data proving all of that, and that translates into crops, that translates into animals and the environment in general, and human beings. And so, again, I don't get into necessarily certainly picking sides in a political argument. I don't have time for that.
Right.
That's just going to bog me down to my goal of ensuring that my children have an amazing environment to grow up in, and that's all right now I care about. And ultimately, think about this, Jeff. What were the millions, tens of millions of people who were programmed with? What were they programmed with to go run out and make sure they got vaccinated for something that was 99.98% survivable? They used fear.
Yeah.
Right? They used fear, and they couldn't have done that in the 70s, 80s, 90s because people were still relatively healthy. Going downhill in the 90s pretty quick. We recognized that back then, but nonetheless, nobody would have followed any of those rules unless we had, 70% of Americans who are on pharmaceuticals, 70% of Americans, ironically, that are obese. We've got a massive issue in this country. None of it would have worked on a healthy population. So ultimately, people are being manipulated through fear, through their health, through food, through all of these things. And ultimately, look, Americans have to make a choice. The ones that don't make that choice, the proper choices to correct the situations in themselves and their family, that's it. That's free will. That's what freedom's all about.
Sure.
But then don't turn around and expect me to pay ridiculous insurance premiums just to support your bad decisions. That's all. That's the double-edged sword of freedom, the way it's supposed to be, right?
Whole facts, man. Whole facts. And that fear has always been a huge motivator. And I heard this recently, man, as part of that fear campaign was rolling out and demonizing people for using ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, zinc, etc. Over 100 politicians were using these very, very treatments in the early stages and during COVID, as they demonized the public and forced them into these gene therapy treatments. They were using the shit that they knew worked. I mean, that when I heard that, it's just aggro, brother, aggro.
Right. Well, and the anti-parasitics, which is what those are, we've all got parasites. That's what people don't realize is that, you give dewormers to your dog because it's got parasites. When we use, ivermectin on a dog or, any of these things, it's going to work. Worms are going to come out of its ass. That's generally what happens. Well, humans are full of them. And, so that's not the only problem, though. The installation and the DNA damage that's gone on for the past God knows how many decades through, these programs, I can tell you that's the goal is DNA repair, cellular repair, function, gut health, getting the balance of the microbes back in the body, and not just the gut, but the entire body systemically, to make sure that all those toxins are being, addressed from our environment. So we could fix a lot of people pretty quickly. It's going to take longer to fix the soil and the environment. So,
I think we have more people like yourself, and like I said, when Nicole Shanahan came up, whether she's a wolf in sheep's clothing or not, the first things out of her mouth was about soil reclamation. So there's obviously becoming more and more awareness to this subject, and I'm hoping for the best. that, RFK gets there in the Department of Health and Human Service and starts addressing these things and dismantling this architecture like you've talked about that just keeps us sick. And, we'll see how much resistance he gets from big ag. And I've asked you guys about that with these huge changes you guys are trying to make, how much resistance you guys are getting from big ag. But we'll see. We'll see down the line. And like I said, this appointment does hearten me to think that, things could be moving in the right direction. But as we move along,
you just don't want it to be as things move towards soil health. People have to understand, again, the GMO or weaponized microbes will be deployed and have been deployed in the soil. So they alter molecular structures of all these beneficial nutrients into, well, we're talking about speeding up the genetic modification of mankind and everything through the food chain and everything through the environment, right? So those microorganisms being pure and of nature are very, very important. And so, you can't patent anything that exists in nature, so it has to be proprietary knowledge, which I'm lucky to be associated with gentlemen that have proprietary knowledge and understanding of these things. And so when you understand where they come from and the years it took to collect them and then put them into a collection, and that these microorganisms, specific types of microorganisms, can survive in extreme conditions, whether it's, a sulfur vent at the bottom of an ocean or in the Arctic. They're very durable and they love to ingest heavy metals and synthetics. So what I'm saying is that there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to say, well, we do composting, or we do this, or we do that. And well, they just don't understand the extremophile world the way that it needs to be understood. And ultimately, if we're successful in everything that we're doing, we'll technically put ourselves out of work, is the idea, right?
Right. That's the point. See, and that's the beautiful way to look at it, because most of these people who want to keep us sick, that's part of their job. They have to keep us sick, otherwise they're out of a job. Whether it's the medical industry, the defense industry, they got to have, war is very profitable, as we're going to get into, and keeping people sick is very, very profitable. You're talking about just quiet weapons for silent wars, which is an awesome book. And this all gets back to what we've always talked about, eugenics. They're just trying to take out a shit ton of us, but they can't go up and put bullets in all of our heads. It's a slow drip. They make a shit ton of money as they slowly kill us, these soft kill weapons. But like I said, I think...
And I hate to interrupt you, but I want to jump in before I forget, I had a very detailed, long conversation with a lady who is a very, very knowledgeable geneticist. And the search right now, people need to be aware that the search in all these laboratories across the country using mRNA and CRISPR technology and a lot of the other technology, that, they're saying, well, and a lot of these people believe it, that they're trying to find a cure for, say, cancer through genetic modification of human beings. Well, people need to understand the severity and the implications of those actions. So and I don't know if we've talked about this part of things, Jeff, is that when we look at a patent on a seed that's been genetically modified, that patent is owned and that seed is owned by that corporation. Now, they've been doing this to trees and they've been doing it to crops, of course. They've been doing it to insects, certainly on animals, and now with some of the technology on human beings. So with the Supreme Court precedent saying you cannot patent anything that exists in nature, but if you create the process to alter, you can patent the process to alter, and you can patent the altered end product. That now, with all of the property, the patented property of these corporations, if they are successful in doing that, which I believe they have already done that to many unsuspecting Americans and people worldwide, if your DNA is no longer intact and it has been altered into what they intended it to be altered into, are you the property of that corporation? And if so, are you still technically a human being?
Right.
And if you're not still a human being by DNA, by genetics, are there actually crimes against humanity against you if you've been altered? Right. So we have to ask ourselves these very deep, reaching moral questions. And through my conversation with this lady, who again is a very accomplished geneticist, I said, but this is what we've been doing for years. We've been reversing DNA damage to, not only crops and animals, but also human beings. Why do you think when someone is very ill with something that maybe an allopathic medical doctor diagnoses and says, you're this is a lifelong thing, tough luck, and then the substances that repair DNA and repair cellular operations, and they no longer have the symptoms of whatever it is they were told they had, right? So she started to get it, and she started to realize the severity of the situation, and so that's the kind of conversations that I've been in for several years now with folks, helping people understand, because yes, all of it can be fixed, every bit of it. So,
well, we'll see. Like I said, with the appointment of RFK, we'll see if we get some headway in this diabolical plan that's been, like you said, operating for so long. But like I said, Trump, our RFK is just one of many appointments. Trump is back. It was an absolutely belt-to-ass whooping on Kamala Harris. I mean, Trump flipped before it was called. I saw Trump flip Dade County down in Miami, and it was just like, damn. And then he just ran the board like a full straight flush, whatever the poker references are. I mean, just the guy's got the White House, the Senate, and with the recent Supreme Court ruling, immunity. Jeez, what could possibly go wrong? But he's back, man. He's back. I mean, we're watching people lose their fucking shit on TV. I mean, it's just like when Hillary lost and the people are screaming and losing their mind. This is like on steroids now because they thought he'd be in jail. They thought he'd be dead. But now he's the president again, bro. I guess you called it, but what are your thoughts on him back? Some of his appointments, which have created a little bit of consternation, RFK being one of them, but, his SecDef nominee, chief of staff, we got Elon Musk rolling with him. When you're talking about altering DNA and redefining what is a human being, I think that kind of belies also this larger conversation that, people like Burmis and people get into about Musk and the whole transhumanist agenda. What do you thought about Trump being back in some of these appointments? And where are we going, dude? Where do we go from here?
I mean, what should we have expected any other, when it comes to appointments other than what he has put in? I mean, really, nothing surprising overall, to me anyway.
Well, it's pretty overt. A lot of people are calling, even just Norm. I mean, they're not even really trying to hide it. His SecDef, this Pete Hegseth or whatever, like the video I just saw, it's everywhere. He says, understanding of Zionism and Americanism are the front lines of Western civilization. So we kind of know where his head's at. And, a lot of these other appointments have certain AIPAC backing, Israeli backing, etc. And so, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, what the fuck? Really?
With some of the kind of the military experts that I've talked to, they're just saying, and this goes for, anybody out there who, no matter what side of the political line you're on, everybody realizes that these appointments are making people's heads explode on both sides.
True that.
Literally.
True that. Especially Matt Gaetz, the Attorney General. Yeah, both sides.
Yeah, so, again, not surprising to me, but, when you sit back and think about their influences, so to speak, look, money talks for a lot of these people, the material world, and having a mansion and not being compromised, not being exposed, and having a good life for your own family sometimes supersedes, the good of the masses, right? So
yeah,
it's just the way it is. I'm not saying that that's the case for all these people. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, their understanding of the world and education that they've received and the influences and circles that they run in, maybe they're just not aware, right? Maybe they're just not aware. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
That is very sweet of you. I cannot extend that kindness, but that is very, very sweet of you. But I mean, in these last 3 years, and definitely the last, let's just say the last 3 years, the world has exponentially gotten more and more on fire, from Ukraine to the Middle East to, you got stuff going on in Bangladesh and Pakistan, and I mean, just all over the world. And, people keep saying, and when we talked to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, he pretty much was saying we've already been in World War III, but it's more of an asymmetrical war. What's the temperature now on this conversation of World War III with Trump coming back in? I saw just today Israel struck one of Iran's active nuclear weapon research facilities. I mean, obviously, this stuff's still going on in Ukraine. Do you see things getting worse in Israel, in Gaza, in Iran, et cetera, or do you see things being kind of reined in with Trump coming back in?
Well, I think things could be reined in, but here's the thing. Again, to take over the world and to control the world and make the world yours, well, what if you were able to terraform the entire planet, kill the soil, grow everything synthetically, tote every inch of soil with weaponized microorganisms, and convert everything genetically into what your creation is, and you control it, haven't you technically already won the war? Right? So do you really need to blow everything up and destroy it?
Exactly.
When it's all technically owned by you, because, we know the banks, the global monetary system is what it is, and that's going to be transformed most likely, and it's going to be deemed a rescue plan after Americans are plunged into horrible situations financially, which that's, I think, going to continue.
Right.
But they can stop the kinetic warfare, and on the surface make it look like they're doing really good things while everything else is taking place. So people just need to be a little more in tune with their environment, I guess, and pay attention to the smaller things. This, as you said, the silent weapons for quiet wars, because they need to fire off any weapons to take over America over the past several decades? No, they didn't really have to do any of that.
Right.
They just needed to convince people through narratives that they would. It's like when you're training a dog or a horse. You don't have to be mean to them. You just apply pressure, and they will go to the area where the pressure is least, and they're making the right decision, and they get rewarded for it. That's how you train human beings. That's
and again, bullets cost a shit ton of money. I mean, it's a more effective strategy to to overtake hearts and minds through your Bernaysian type of social engineering and all this other stuff. And like you said, we've talked about this many times and even played the clips or posted the meme where Aldous Huxley talked about in the '60s slavery by consent and how we're going to love and embrace our slavery and our overlords and our masters. And I see that kind of coming with Trump. I don't see a lot of good things coming, like you just mentioned. I think a huge thing we're going to be seeing is a certain financial collapse, and they're going to blame it on all these other people, but it still will do something to the dollar and the potentiality of this CBDC, the central bank digital currency, where all things are tracked, all your transactions are no longer anonymous, et cetera, et cetera. I definitely see that in the offing. And, again, the larger apparatus or structure, if you will, goes back to our late friend Rosa Quarry talking about Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, where everything's monitored, the standardization of all systems, our energy, our water, everything is monitored and regulated. And I see that's what's possibly coming, because it's going to be that Hegelian dialectic. These guys are going to, like you just said, provide this. They don't have to kill people. They don't have to go blow shit up anymore. They're going to provide the solution to the thing that they created, and we're going to beg for it.
And thusly why we want to create entire subdivisions, and eventually it will spread across the nation through appeal, not through fear, not through anything else, but through appeal of, wow, an entire subdivision with an independent power system, an entire subdivision with an independent food system, with clean water that's actually been purified through, means that are far beyond carbon filters and all the garbage that you're seeing. While those do work in many cases, what do you do with the carbon filter after all the toxins are in them? Oh, you throw them in the landfill. It goes right back into the environment.
Yeah.
All of these, and we're talking, decentralized monetary systems, decentralized power systems, decentralized food systems, decentralized education systems, completely decentralized. And look, the parents ultimately are going to wake up through that process, and they are going to seek what is truly best for their children. And what is best for my children? I've always done my best to not, and I posted this on social media, I'm not here to tell my children what to think. I'm trying to teach them how to think.
Well, it's still legal, of course.
To question everything. And if you don't question everything that you're told to do, there's a problem. There's some internal talk that's not going on, and some intuition that's been lost along the way. And for anybody that hears this broadcast and says that they aren't a slave, look, Jeff, you and I are still slaves to the system. We are. I have to get on my online banking, and I have to, withdraw money, or I have to use one of the, monetary systems, credit cards, or whatever it is, I'm still a slave to that. I'm luckily have removed myself from a lot of the slave systems, like the medical system and all of that sort of stuff, through my understanding of how immune systems function. But nonetheless, we're all, anybody that thinks they're not a slave, unless you have truly removed yourself from all connections and live comfortably, like Jim Gale down at Gulf's Landing in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
People can go down there. There's Airbnbs down there. Just look up Gulf's Landing in Florida. People can go spend as many days as they want there learning about Food Forest University, the solar all over the place, the water purification systems they have in place. Everything is self-contained. If the world burned to the ground, Gulf's Landing would continue, and that's what you want for your family.
We've always talked about that. Think globally, act locally, and what you're talking about with what you're doing is off-grid breakaway civilizations. And like you said, man, whether we're directly slaves, which we could get into that conversation, or indirectly benefiting from it, this is something after everyone was just really needing the Heimlich for fucking sucking on their own cock because Trump won and all this other shit. The next level virtue signaling. I said on Twitter, I was like, as we witness champion level selective virtue signaling, I'm amazed to see everyone throw out their cell phones and go back to landlines because of the cobalt in them that is mined by human, most notably child slavery. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't. We tend to talk a lot of shit, though. And, that's ultimately what it is. I mean, we're all kind of locked into some degree, and I guess we kind of have our selective application of, how we define freedom, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, right now, if I don't pay my phone bill, my cell phone bill, which is run by a massive corporation that charges exuberant amounts of money for my monthly cell phone operations, with my global banking Visa card, I am absolutely not a free man.
Well, and that's a big deal here in Missouri, and my man Rob Carter talks about it all the time as property tax. I know it's a thing in a lot of states, but do I really own my house, my car, if I have to pay a certain tax to own this? No, the banks really own it, and I'm just paying the banks the luxury of having this thing when I don't really own it. So it's how do we really define our freedom? Not to get too existential about it, but I feel freedom comes from within. But it's interesting. Well, go ahead, brother.
No, when we go deeper into this, and we, have had, one of our friends on the podcast years ago talking specifically about how to remove yourself from the system, and they've successfully done all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Todd McGreevy, Corey Ebe, I think that's how I pronounce it. But, yeah, check that episode out about the, two or three different constitutions? Yeah, very, very deep episode on that one, man.
Yeah, and so, pardon my language, but there's a website where you can actually go and learn a lot about this. He's got I think it's a 26 video instructional on how to do this. And the website is, get this, onestupidfuck.com.
Easy to remember.
But, he'll hit on things like ens legis, which is another term, a Latin term, for what a citizen, if you use the term citizen, if you say my rights as an American citizen to keep and bear arms, you absolutely don't. You do not have that right, 100%. You don't have that percent. Ens legis, the Latin term for citizen, basically, it's a Latin legal term that refers to an artificial being created by the law. So, in as we know, in 1871, when the United States Corporation was created and forced to happen by the central bankers of England for the American leaders to get a loan for this corporation that was newly formed, that they had to pledge. They had nothing in collateral technically, but the future labor of the citizens, right? So
see, that's that subtlety, man. That legalese word of art that is used. You just like you said, you just think of a citizen as no, I'm just a citizen, meaning I'm a participant of this, member of this state or this commonwealth or whatever. But no, it has certain meanings. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's when they say, when you're treated as lost at sea or dead, that's where the terms where it comes in ens legis is that these entities are created by the law. And they have legal rights and responsibilities, but they do not have physical bodies or exist basically in the same way as humans do. So when these people that know how to do this, or you can find a legal team of non-barred attorneys who can legally legitimately. I'm not talking, sovereign citizen bullshit. I'm talking like full knowing how to do all of this.
Right.
People that have removed themselves from the system, they're not paying property taxes. They're not paying taxes at all. For instance, the guest that we had on with Todd, he deliberately, to test the system and prove that he was correct, would drive with no license plate and no driver's license at all.
In California.
And they would impound his car and tow it and put him in jail and all these things. And he had a fee schedule that he ran off of, basically, so that, every hour that they detained him and every hour it took him to get his vehicle back and then go to court and deal with all this, well, he ended up winning every single time.
Yeah.
So he's in the computer systems. And, if he gets pulled over somewhere, they'll put him in the system with his documents. And the computer system says, stay away from this.
They don't mess with him anymore.
You don't touch this guy because he costs us $300,000 every time we touch him. And, so that's, people that have that knowledge, they are already, if they do it through, the right, again, non-barred legal teams, have removed themselves so succinctly from the system that when they get pulled over and the officer punches in their information, say you get pulled over for speeding, and a lot of these people have a driver's license, they have a license plate on their vehicle, they don't want to deal with the hassles, that come with all of that. The officer will come back to the vehicle and say, have a great day, because it says do not arrest, do not detain.
We got to get Corey and Todd back on to kind of catch up, because that was pre or during COVID maybe, but I'd definitely love to get them back on to chop it up and see where they're at. I mean, hopefully they're done with all the madness, but be anxious to hear about that, man. But all right, I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. I definitely anything else you want to chop it up with, Champ? I did want to ask what I guess I kind of already asked, like, what now do you see as far as Trump's appointment? To me personally, with like Elon Musk, not a huge fan, man. I think he's a Bond villain. I think he's one of the biggest wolves in sheep's clothing ever. I think he is going to help bring in this Agenda 21, this technocratic business. I think we're going to see in a huge exponential expansion, 21st century style expansion of the surveillance state. We're going to see more sophisticated drones, utilization of facial recognition. I think there is going to be some measure of expansion of what we know as the surveillance state with him in the mix there. What are your thoughts?
Well, how do you make that happen? How do you bring about full-blown digital currency? Right. In my personal opinion, and I'll bounce this off of you, and the listeners can evaluate this, to get freedom-loving Americans to walk away from a physical currency, how can you possibly accomplish that? Well, you have to, I would think, make people so afraid of taking money from each other, hand-to-hand physical contact, they're just terrified that they're going to get sick. So is there undoubtedly another horrible pandemic on the way that they obviously have most likely created? I think that's a very likely angle for pushing everybody into digital currency potentially. Or, look, all the banks tell all the businesses and all the corporations, we're no longer accepting cash. You have to do digital. You have no choice, or you're going to go away as well. What are people going to choose? They're going to choose to feed their children.
Right? I think that definitely could create and be a catalyst for people like, no, I'm not touching shit for money. But in addition to that, what are your thoughts on, for lack of a better term, what we're seeing, this de-dollarization, this expansion of these BRIC nations, this multipolar world order that is moving away from American U.S. hegemony as well as American fiat currency? Is the rise of BRICS any threat to the U.S. dollar in that regard? Or
I think that the Chinese economy, the European economy, the American economy, everything is going to be imploded by design.
Right.
The Chinese people have already suffered enough. I mean, for the most part, they work for, scraps to begin with. But so quality of life is certainly not what it has been here in America for everybody for the most part. Of course, we've got our poverty-stricken areas. But nonetheless,
we're going to own nothing and you're going to love it, though. Like you said, it's by design, is it not? This World Economic Forum, austere measures, breaking everybody.
Well, when Americans are put in enough pain, they'll have a decision to make. And
that's
that
true.
will be freedom, through freedom, or it will be slavery. It's one or the other. And that's why we're, doing the best we can to give people options, the decentralized options. And so, all these communities that are going to be created are going to be able to help each other. Industry, all these things that need to come back to America. Self-sufficiency is going to be very important, all of it. But, you're going to see undoubtedly false flag attacks. There's going to be some horrible things that happen. There's going to be then, the digital ID is going to have to be, the Americans are going to be told they need digital ID to secure their freedoms or to secure their loved ones and create a safe environment. And, to go in and out. Trump's already talked about that. Going in and out of the country, we need digital ID.
Yes.
And all these things.
Yeah. Well, and again, goes back to that Aldous Huxley, man. That slavery by consent. We're gonna ask for it. And it seems to me like as we fall for this dialectic again of this fucking savior, we're slowly being rocked to sleep by these heroes that are supposedly coming to save us. And it's like, again, it's a wickedly brilliant conditioning engineering plan that I think is gonna. I think it, as we've seen with this election, it's working on a lot of people. So we will continue to revisit this conversation. But I would be absolutely derelict if I was not on the horn with the UFC Hall of Famer, first ever UFC welterweight champion and trainer of many champions, if I did not ask you about some of the scraps we got going on this weekend. On a lighter note, and it could be horseshit, who knows, what are your thoughts on Tyson Jake Paul, bro, which is going down tonight? Is it a complete and utter work, or is Tyson's just out for that $20 million bag, or what is this?
I think, Tyson, I don't know. They did a lot of work with that boy. He did a lot of work. He did a lot of the heavy lifting. He got himself in shape. He looks great. Knowing that he's truly healthy and moving the way he is, I don't doubt that he smashes Jake Paul. I really don't.
Does he?
If it's the WWE,
yeah.
Who knows? Who knows if they're
is Jake's job? I mean, he's technically a middleweight. Is Jake's job to go head to head with him in the first opening moments? Because that seems to be Tyson's strong point. Or does he do work from the outside, wear him down, and then just take him to deep waters?
Take a beating and hope the old guy gets tired.
Which I think he will. Hey, look, he freaking quit with Kevin McBride, 20, I don't know. It's a shit show, and part of me likes it. Honestly, champ, I'm wondering. I'm off work tonight, and I'm like, do I watch this? Part of me wants to see the circus of it, but it's like, I don't know, man. I love combat sports, man. I've always been a huge boxing fan, huge MMA fan. And I don't know if this kind of thing cheapens the sport at all, because, it's a free market. If people want to watch, they want to watch. But I'm like, do I want to participate in this or not?
Well, but here's the thing. I have to give credit to Jake Paul and his brother.
I do too.
At one time, we have to, no matter how anybody feels about those guys, at one time they were just YouTubers,
right?
Filming a dead guy hanging in the Japanese forest.
Yeah.
And let's be honest. But so they had to envision themselves pulling this shit off.
Yeah.
To be able to get there, and they've done it. So look, anybody can sit back and go, those guys are, this or that or whatever people want to say to detract from what they've done.
Right.
They're pulling this shit off.
They are. And I think the game has changed a lot. Like boxing, I could be wrong, but it's like, back in the day during the Hagler Hearns, fucking, the golden era of boxing, I think it's just different. Even the Tyson heavyweight era. And I think these guys have filled a void of, the content creators. I think that the market's kind of different what we expect from some of these shit shows. I forget his name, but, the guy who came up with, like, car jujitsu and shit like that. I forget his name, but I'm going to have him on the talk. JT something or other. He works with Mark Coleman. But anyway, I might check it out. But you got a little skin in the game on this fight Saturday, man. Your fellow Croatian, Stipe Miocic, is going to be facing off against Johnny Bones, dude. What's that one look like to you?
Miocic has got to put the muscle on him because – Jones is too quick for him, too athletic. I think that hopefully Miocic can put some horsepower down on him and make it a good fight. A couple of years ago, I would have picked Miocic hands down to win the fight, but right now, Miocic, is hasn't been around for a while. Neither is Jones.
Yeah, as I say, but coming off an injury, that pectoral injury that tore it straight off the bone. That's a nasty one.
Well, it's just going to come down to Miocic has got to put the power on Jones right away. Nonetheless, because I do feel, Miocic has the wrestling ability to at least slow down Jones's ability to put him on the ground. So Miocic has got to cut off the ring. Jones is very fluent with his movement, has extremely long reach, as everybody knows.
81 inches.
So I think Miocic has to hurt him early. and gas him out a little bit to get ahead and pull this off.
And if Jones wins, I heard in the conference last night, Dana said if John Jones wins, his next opponent will be Tom Aspinall. Is he just saying that definitively right now? But if John does just snuffs out Stipe, does he get to call his shots and possibly get a fight with Pereira?
Boy, I don't know. Pereira's got to be careful going up and dealing. I mean, Pereira's a big dude. I called his first fight in America. He's a big, big guy. But going up to heavyweight, look, no matter what anybody says, Pereira's decent on the ground. I've seen him get himself in real hot water on the ground in his career so far already. But when you get a heavyweight who's a good grappler, especially like a John Jones or somebody like that, you're not getting back up. You're just not. Unless you're a really good wrestler and a very good jiu-jitsu player. You're just not getting back
I remember, I think it was, the only fight, Chael Sonnen with John Jones. He's like, I thought I was fighting a fucking bear. Like, he's so strong.
Jones is very unique, a unique genetic specimen, and obviously very gifted. He didn't get there by not working hard, though. People have to remember that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be anxious to see it, man. Champ, as always, appreciate your time. I know you got that event this evening. I hope that goes off well. Say what's up to Miss Mariah for me. And thank you guys for tuning in with us, man. Thank you guys for sticking with us. You have stuck with us. The faithful farmers out there, peace and all that love to you guys. We really, really, really appreciate it. And like I said, it may not be super consistent, but we're going to do our best to slide in here and drop some content for you guys. So peace. So much love. Champ, love you, brother.
All right, buddy. Love you, too.
All right. Talk to you guys soon. Holla.